Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 10. We have a lot to get to this episode. I did not do an episode last week because I was on vacation, but now I am back, and I am feeling refreshed. We're going to quickly go over UFC 277, and then we're going to review Santos vs. Hill, also review some of the PFL Playoffs, and then I have PFL, UFC, and Bellator to preview, and I will be at the Bellator pre- and post-fight interviews. As always, ring that bell. All right, let's get started with UFC 277. Pantoja got the quick submission against Perez in the first round. He is definitely up next for that flyweight title shot once the interim belt and regular belt are combined. Moving on, we had a quick heavyweight fight against Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlicek. The fight only lasted 55 seconds. I think it was a little bit early of a stoppage. I wouldn't mind those two running it back. In the co-main event, we had Brandon Moreno taking on Kai Kara-France for the interim flyweight title, and Brandon Moreno got the TKO finish in the third round. Vicious body shot just shuts down Kara-France, and he cannot recover. Moving on, we had a very, very one-sided main event. Amanda Nunes dominated, but Juliana Pena stood tough, and she got knocked down a bunch of times, but she did not quit. This was a little bit, I don't know if it was, maybe I just put too much stock in Pena, but, Nunes did whatever she wanted in this fight. She knocked down Pena like 3 times in one round, and Pena was very bloodied and torn up at the end. But, Juliana Pena, she has that dog in her. She is not an easy out, but the Lioness gets her double champ status back, so I'm interested to see what they do, especially with the featherweight division, because there's no standings at all, and she's still the champion of that division, so will they do anything with the featherweight division? Who knows? But that was my quick thoughts on UFC 277. Moving on to Santos vs. Hill. This was an amazing fight card. 10 fights, 10 finishes. Ridiculous. This was a 100% rate finish. The first time at a UFC event in 8 years. So if you watched this past UFC event, you watched history. So that is something very cool to think about. Getting into the fights, we had Bruno Silva getting a submission win over Ed Eager. And then we had Corey McKenna getting the submission win over Granger. We move on to Brian Battle getting a vicious head kick KO against Takashi Sato. Wow, this head kick was brutal. Just the sound of it was deafening, and Sato was frozen in place, and he was out for a long time. So Brian Battle gets that head kick KO victory, and he called out Ian Gary. I wouldn't mind that fight at all. I think these are two great welterweight prospects. And moving on to the next fight, we had Mikel Onjacek taking on Sam Alvey, and Oskila Jacek gets it done viciously by TKO. Alvey, that's like his 9th straight loss. That was the last fight on his UFC deal. So, I think Alvey's probably going to retire after this. I'm not sure, but it was one of the worst losing streaks in UFC history. So, and he got knocked down twice. Credit to him. He did get back up the first time. He fought his way back up, but it was just too much for him. Moving on to the main card, we continue with Terrence McKinney versus Eric Gonzalez, and McKinney gets the first round submission. This guy cannot get out of the first round. McKinney, another impressive victory. He continues to be a surging lightweight prospect. Moving on, we had a heavyweight fight against Augusto Sakai and Sergey Spakovic, and Spakovic gets the TKO victory. And then we had the women's flyweight Ultimate Fighter championship fight. We had Brogan Walker and Juliana Miller, and Juliana Miller gets the victory in the third round with vicious ground and pound moving. She had a lot of elbows in there, so very, very good win. And congratulations to Juliana Miller for being this season's women's flyweight tough winner. And also closing out the Ultimate Fighter season, we had Muhammad Usman taking on Zach Puaga, and this was the heavyweight finale. And Zach Puaga was winning every minute of this fight until Muhammad Usman caught him clean on the chin, and he went out. He was out bad. And so Usman shows off his power, and he and his brother are both Ultimate Fighter champions. What a cool story. I don't know if two brothers have ever won tough before, but, congratulations to Muhammad Usman. Moving on to the co-main event, this was a crazy, crazy fight. We had Vincent Luque taking on Jeff Neal, and what happened? Jeff Neal, oh my goodness, an impressive performance. He dominated Vincent Luque in the first round. Credit to Luque for coming back in the second, but Neal, man, he showed that his hands are made of steel. I mean, this guy was just brutal. All the uppercuts, and this is the first time that Vincent Luque has ever been finished in the UFC, so credit to Jeff Neal for doing that, because Vincent Luque is a tough guy, and to finish him is just crazy. So Jeff Neal, his stock rises a lot. This was, again, I was very impressed by his performance. He looked like his old self. He had a little bit of struggles in the UFC. His last fight was a split decision win against Ponzinibbio. So Neal, watch out for him. Moving on to this main event, we had Thiago Santos taking on Jamal Hill. And this was a great fight, action-packed. Jamal Hill gets the finish in the fourth round. He went all out, and he got the finish. Man, Jamal Hill is such an exciting fighter in this light heavyweight division. He brings the fight. He was not afraid to stand there and bang with Thiago Santos, who, he's had his troubles, but he is still a very powerful guy. And Jamal Hill, just an impressive performance. He continues to rapidly rise in this light heavyweight division. This weekend, we also had PFL action. This was the first PFL playoff card, so a lot is at stake. In the light heavyweight semifinal, we had Wilkinson taking on Monty, and Wilkinson got it done with a vicious knee in the clinch, just froze Monty, and Wilkinson, he looks good. Robert Wilkinson looks good at 205. He looks like a truck. Wilkinson did fight in the UFC, and he did lose to Adesanya years ago in the middleweight division. But Rob Wilkinson, oh my goodness, he's looked amazing in PFL, and he looks really good at light heavyweight. So he's definitely my favorite to win the light heavyweight championship. And then we also had a lightweight semifinal against OAM and Martinez, and OAM gets the victory. He now moves on to the lightweight final. And then we had another lightweight semifinal. We had Akhmedov and we had Silveria, and Akhmedov gets that victory. So it will be him and Wilkinson in that light heavyweight final. Moving on to another lightweight semifinal, we had the second fight in about 8 weeks against Pettis and Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray gets the decision victory against Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis just looked like he didn't get out of first gear. He was kind of just, coasting a little bit. And, he just wasn't as aggressive as I thought he should have been, because I thought he was down in the fight from the start. Stevie Ray looked really sharp, really good. So now Stevie Ray moves on to the lightweight finals, and he faces OAM. So this is that's going to be a very interesting matchup. Two former UFC guys as well. So let's see who comes away with that $1 million. And now let's get to UFC Fight Night, Vera versus Cruz. We have, it's a pretty good card. Let's highlight some fights. Odie Osborne versus Tyson Nam. That is a flyweight bout to look out for. Osborne is coming off of a first round stoppage. So definitely let's see if he can capitalize off of that momentum. Another matchup to look out for on this prelim is Angela Hill taking on Lupi Gondinez. Both of these fighters are game fighters. This is going to be a very pressure-heavy fight. I believe both fighters are going to stand with each other. You know, they're both stand-up fighters, so this is definitely a fight to look out for. As the prelim headliner, we move on to this main card. We have Bruno Silva taking on Gerald Moshart. That's going to be a fun fight. Bruno Silva, he had a very entertaining last fight with Alex Pereira, so I expect this fight to be very entertaining. We move on to Cynthia Cavallo taking on Nina Nunez. This fight was supposed to take place about a month ago, but it has been moved to this card. We go to the light heavyweight division, and we have Devin Clark taking on Azmet Magzonov. Moving on, we have a women's strawweight matchup against Yasmin Jaguri and Isman Lakando. And in the co-main event, we have Nate Landwehr taking on David Onama. David Onama just fought last month and picked up the submission victory against Armfield. So it is going to be interesting to see how Onama comes out in this fight. Then, of course, we move on to the main event. Marlon Vera taking on Dominic Cruz. Man, what a vicious victory for Vera in his last fight against Rob Font. He just messed up Rob Font really bad and got the decision victory, I believe. So, you know, Vera is he is definitely a very brutal mixed martial artist. Let's just say that he has some vicious knockouts. He's a very dangerous fighter. But I don't know if he's ever really faced a fighter like Dominic Cruz. Obviously, Cruz, former multi-time UFC bantamweight champ. Probably, in my opinion, the bantamweight GOAT right now. I mean, you know, he's just been a staple in this division, and it's really been injuries that have held him out. But he's getting back on track, and he really wants to get back to that title. So Cruz, one of my favorite fighters to watch. His movement is just so unique. It's his own movement, and you know, no one really replicates it like he does. So that may give Cruz the advantage in this fight, just kind of his movement. But Vera, I mean, he brutally front kicked Frankie Edgar into into another world. So I mean, Vera has those weapons to kind of just pull out of nowhere and end a fight very soon. And I don't think Cruz really fights like that. I think Cruz is kind of more of a technician in there. And, you know, I think if it goes the distance, Cruz is going to have the advantage. But Vera, like I've said, he has those dangerous tools, and he can end a fight in an instant. You know, it's going to be a very intriguing main event. Now, moving on to Bellator. Let's start with some prelims for Bellator 284. Josh Hill is in a matchup taking on Marcos Breno, and I believe Hill is the number 8 bantamweight in Bellator. We move on to Diana Bennett versus Justine Kish. Justine Kish actually coming off of a very big win against Lima Lee McFarlane. So Kish, she's making a pretty good run so far in Bellator. And now we move to this main card, and we have Austin Vanderford taking on Aaron Jeffrey. Aaron Jeffrey is taking this fight on short notice, so much respect to Jeffrey. I did see Jeffrey live when he fought at Mohegan Sun on the Musasi versus Eblen card, and Jeffrey impressed me, and he got the stoppage win. So this is a big opportunity, really, because Austin Vanford is the number one middleweight in the rankings for Bellator. So Vanford's either number one or number two, but he can shoot his way up into these Bellator middleweight rankings. Then we have a heavyweight fight against Saeed Samwa and Ghanem Sarkam. Then, speaking of Lima Lee McFarland, she is taking on Bruna Ellen. So let's see if she can bounce back from that loss to Justine Kish. In the co-main event, we have Valentin Moravsky and Steve Mowry. If you don't already know, Steve Mowry was generous enough to take the time out of his busy schedule and fight camp to do an interview with me. So if you have not seen the interview, it is on the KO Podcast YouTube page. So, Steve Mowry, 10-0. He's 6'7". He's taking on a former title challenger in Moldavsky. Big opportunity for Mowry. I wish him nothing but the best. Moving on to the main event, we have Naaman Gracie taking on Goati Yamakachi. And, Yamakachi is a submission specialist. Naaman Gracie, obviously very well-versed in the jiu-jitsu game. Are we going to see a stand-up battle like Gracie's last fight, or are we going to see a grapple-heavy fight between these two aces in that department? So it's going to be interesting to see what type of course both of these fighters take. It's going to be a very interesting main event. And as I said before, I will be covering this event via Zoom, the pre-fight and post-fight interviews. So stay tuned on that. I will be posting that on Instagram, Twitter, on everything. So just follow the KO Podcast and you can keep up to date with that. Now we're going to get into some Dana White Contender Series talk. This is week 3 of the Contender Series. Last week was a week that was very action-packed. All the fights had a stoppage. Compared to week 1, obviously Dana White's message was loud and clear because, that Contender Series week 2 card was insane. So let's take a look at week 3 of the Contender Series. First bout, we have a women's strawweight bout. We have Sandra Lavadio, who is ranked the number 1 woman in Peru, and these rankings are by Tapology. And she is taking on Karolina Wachczyk, who is the number 2 ranked woman from Poland. Then we also have a flyweight men's tilt. We have Clayton Carpenter. He is the number 2 ranked flyweight from Arizona. And he is taking on Edgar Cherez, who is the number 14th flyweight from Mexico. And in a featherweight tilt, we have Edvor Bonjatovic, who is the number 132 ranked featherweight from the U.S. Southeast. And he is taking on Eric Silva, who is the number 12th featherweight in Latin America. We have a heavyweight fight, including Paulo Ratalho Jr., who is the number 27th ranked Brazil heavyweight. He is taking on Jamal Poigas. I think I said that correctly. I apologize if I butchered that. He is the number 5 light heavyweight for the U.S. West. So he is making a jump up to heavyweight from light heavyweight. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in the heavyweight division. And the featured bout, we have Zachary Borrego, who is the number 59 ranked middleweight from the U.S. Southeast. He did miss weight by 1.5 pounds, and he's taking on the wrestler Bo Nickel, who is the number 79th ranked middleweight in the USC Southeast. So Bo Nickel, obviously, he was a collegiate wrestler and a very good one at that. So let's see how that game translates to MMA. He is 1-0, and his opponent is 3-0. So, it's going to be a very interesting bout. Bo Nickel did win his pro MMA debut by knockout. So, going to be interested to see if he incorporates his wrestling skills into this matchup. So, if you want to watch fights on Tuesday night, this is the place to be. And continuing with the PFL playoffs, we have the welterweight semifinal. We have Sai versus Leo, and this is going to be it's going to be a very I don't really know too much about these fighters' history. I have watched their fights all this season. So Sai, he did pick up a victory over McDonald, which obviously, if you beat someone like Rory McDonald, you gotta have a lot of talent. And then we also have Carlos Lille, and this is very interesting because he kind of just appeared into this season out of nowhere. Really, he's 2-0 in this PFL season. And, he won against Ray Cooper, which was a really big win for him, and that's kind of what put him on the map for this season. So both of these guys coming off of wins against elite welterweights. Moving on, we got the heavyweight semifinal. We got Galtasov versus Shafel. Then we have another heavyweight semifinal. We have Ante Dicheka. And we have Ferreira. Now, Ferreira, he's 6'8", so he's a huge heavyweight. He had a crazy knockout his last fight. So, both of these guys coming in here with obviously momentum, and Delicha, he was in the heavyweight finals, I believe, last year. And then we have another welterweight semifinal. We have Rory McDonald taking on Magomed Lakhtov. And, if Rory McDonald can win this, he'll finally be able to get to that championship fight in the PFL. So a lot of people believe that he can win this. So let's see if he can get the job done. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO podcast. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen in. If you want to stay up to date with the podcast, follow the podcast on Instagram at the KO_podcast, and Twitter, YouTube. Type in the KO podcast with Tyler Russo, and have a blessed rest of your day. Bye-bye.